On a whim, I decided to indulge in my other nerdy addiction, magic. And today we're gonna turn that into a fun little challenge. Whatever rare I pull in this pack is gonna determine the color scheme of this here Space Marine. So what will it be? Is Richard Garfield, PhD, gonna bless my Marine in me? Or is Mark Rosewater going to burn me some bulk rare? Let's get cracking. Ooh. Huh. A Taster of Wares. Not a particularly powerful card and definitely not a valuable one, but I am loving this little cutie of a goblin, and I think its color scheme will pair perfectly with this Justiciar, or Justicar, or Justicator, or whatever this thing's called. Games Workshop, will you just calm down with your naming? Jeez. Just look at the peachiness of this goblin's ear, where the sun's light is peering through the thin flap of flesh. Absolutely majestic. Before we start adding paint, I want to remove some of the extra giblets around this model. Buttons can be hard enough on their own. Can you imagine trying to do this many in power armor? It's ridiculous. And the base is going to be pretty simple. Some dirt, a rock, you know, the finer things in life. I started with a hot chocolate brown all around town because the shadows in the Taster Wares art are a little bit more on the warm side as opposed to the typical cool. You hear a lot of people recommend bluer shadows, and yeah, that often works. Kind of like how most movies have cooler shadows and warmer tones, you know, that whole blue and orange look. But in our little fantasy world, that type of logic need not apply. Now, when I'm using other pieces of art as inspiration, I want to think about how much each color is taking up proportionally, and even more importantly, how the colors are juxtaposed within the composition, which is just a fancy way of saying what colors are on top of or near other colors. But more on that later. This Goblin Warlock's skin and this tree next to him take up around the same visual area in the card as the Justiciar takes up on the model as a whole. So we're going to go with a green Marine. And yes, I could have just said the Goblin is green, so the Marine is going to be green too, but I just needed you to know that there was a little bit more that went into it than that, and yeah, shut up, alright? Jeez. This was applied everywhere and mostly just in one coat. I tried to keep the layer the thinnest where I wanted the model to be dark, and even left some of the shadows as is so the armor retained its nice brownliness. Now, the second largest field of color on our adorable little Goblin's card is the gradient from a bright warm sunrise, where the sky deepens from a nice beige to a darker deep blue. I think this Marine's fabulous cape is the perfect canvas for a hazy, dewy morning sunrise, so I gave it a nice base of dark gray blue. We have the big basic bundles of color down, but now we need to focus on the details, starting with the skulls. For these, I used a dark ivory color. This doesn't perfectly match the yellow bits around the haze of the Taster's environment, or even its pasty belly, but it's somewhere in between, and I think that'll do. The ivory coated the mandatory skulls around this extremely Warhammerish figure, including his skull helmet, which, trust me, makes him look super cool and tough, and not at all like a guy who likes the Punisher too much but doesn't really understand the subtext. He's too manly for that, just like our little Snookums here. You are a problematic one, aren't ya? To start introducing a bit of peachiness to this manly Marine, I brought out a fleshy color to highlight all the leather bits. Since leather is, you know, skin, adding this before applying an overall darker brown color is a nice way to quickly approximate a leather texture thing. We'll get to that part in a bit, and I honestly ended up really messing it up. You'll see. First, let's get a base coat down on these metallics. Not really drawing inspiration from the magic card here, just a neutral dark metal color that is suitable for the Marine. I guess it's kind of like these things that are spilling out of this bag our little Snookums here is pilfering if you want to think about it too hard, but I don't. And then the gold I use next kind of emulates the golden haze of Edgar Sanchez Hidalgo's lovely illustration, but I mean that's a bit of a stretch too. Speaking of emulating, I got inspired to do this video by a video made by my friend Beecher over at This Menu Sucks. If you want some more chill Warhammer and mini painting content in your life, go check out his channel. He hasn't posted in a minute, but he mentioned that he has some cool stuff in the works. Check him out. And here's where I messed up the leather. I used way too dark of an overlay color here and completely covered all of our highlighting. You can still see it a bit if you really try, but yeah, that was kind of a wasted step. Oh well. life goes on. Now it's time to get to work on the lantern. I'm bringing out that same peachy flesh color used on the leathery bits to give the glowing parts of the lantern a base coat. Now remember back when we started and I mentioned the juxtaposition and how much color of each color there is? The reason I think this peachy color looks so great on the Taster of Wares is because of two things. The color is unlike nearly anything else on the card in hue and saturation, and there's just a teeny itty bit of it so our eyes instantly snap to the contrast.
So that peachy color is perfect for the lantern on this model. Naturally, we want the lantern to be the brightest part of the model and pop out compared to the rest of it.
Speaking of contrast, we need to add some brighter brights to our pretty mid-tone armor. I mixed up the green with the same peachy color for a quick highlight brought around the armor, focusing on the edges and a few raised areas. I don't want to go too hard on this highlight step though, as I want the armor and really the whole model to be pretty dark, so the lantern will look brighter in comparison at the end. I noticed this baddie's bead belt around now and used my ivory to give those pretty pearls some pop. While the ivory was still wet, I took the opportunity to punch up the highlights on all the bones and the purity scrolls, which I had previously painted peach, punching up their brightness. But you know what would brighten up my day? If you subscribe to this channel, of course. And tell you what, I got something to sweeten the deal. If you help me get to 40,000 subscribers by the end of this year, I'm gonna do a 24-hour challenge, either building or painting a Knight Titan in a day or fully speed painting an army. So go ahead and subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see me tackle in a 24-hour challenge in the comments below. Have you seen this dude's ribs? I just noticed how awesome that detail is and I want to draw more attention to it. Using the same ivory, I colored those in to make them look even more like bones. Back to the lantern. Well, I guess that's more of an hourglass, isn't it? Oh well, it's a glowing hourglass now. A bit of pale pink was used to brighten those up, focusing on the middlest portions of each hourglass bulb to make it appear to be glowing. Now I'm not gonna go whole ass on OSL here, just kinda half-ass. I'm tired and sometimes it's okay just to paint for fun and not get bogged down with perfection. You think our little buddy here cares about being perceived as perfect? Not a chance. This little cutie is living his life carefree and totally in the moment, and we should all be a little more like him. Not all the way like him though. What I want to focus a bit more of my effort and energy on is the cape gradient, which I will accomplish with a wet blend. I first used the same blue base coat where I wanted the cape to stay a darker blue, then mixed up a halfway point between that blue and the ivory we have been using. Using that halfway blue, I massaged the paints around the model itself, creating a nice little gradient. Then I used that halfway blue down to an almost pure ivory in the same manner. This isn't perfect, but that's okay. The most important part about wet blending is getting somewhere 80% of the way there and then learning when to stop and let it dry. Much like I'm not doing here and continually messing up the blend by overworking it. See how I just pulled up all the paint right there? Yeah, I really should have just let this puppy dry, but sometimes I just can't help myself. After maybe learning my lesson, I applied the paint in little sections across the model, trying my hardest not to make the same mistakes again. I did, but that's okay too. Once the layers actually dry, it's nice to go back in and wet blend again. Since these layers are all at least a little translucent, the gradients will build up on each other, ultimately becoming smoother and smoother the more time you want to sink into the project. 2 to 3 layers is enough for me on this one, ending with a gradient that is much brighter than the first ones, mimicking the bright sunrise behind the Taster of Wares. That's enough brightening for now though, let's bring out some brown to tone down the armor a bit. I have this sweet translucent brown from Procurl that will be perfect for the shadows. I applied this thinly where I wanted shadows to be around the armor and also used it to darken down the variety of skull eyes adorning it. I also brought out a bright pure white for the final punchy highlight on the lantern. This is the only time and place I will use a pure white on this whole model, which should really give it a nice glow. Now there's some yellow in the haze of this painting that I don't think we're representing well enough, so I brought out some goldenrod to work out the brown base a bit. This was slathered just about everywhere on the base and followed up with some tan to make the rock look rockier and a light umbery brown to help the wood look woodier. The brightness of the lamp is just about perfect, but I want to bring in more of the pink to its peachiness. So I grabbed a translucent red color and used that as a glaze around the edges of the glowing hourglass, upping the saturation. I also used that on the sword, which has some nice runes on it. While that dried, I rimmed the bases with some satin black before bringing out my favorite new and also old hobby tool, a colored pencil. Yes, you heard that right. I've recently been using colored pencils for edge highlighting and they work like a dream. They're swift and fast and not nearly as much of a pain in the ass compared to actually painting edges. I go into more detail on how to use these and a few other secret techniques in my batch painting 100 Marines video. I'll link that at the end for you to check out. This was used basically all over the model, giving just about every edge a nice punchy highlight. I use a bright yellowy one on everything but the cape and the cloak, which got a bright blue one instead. Last thing to tackle is these sword runes. I mixed up a quick white oil wash and let it soak in the recesses of the runes before letting it sit overnight. The next night I used a Q-tip to remove the excess, leaving just the bright runes behind, which I attempted to make glow with a bit of translucent red. I'm not 100% sold on the result, but it'll do. Alright, I hope you enjoyed watching this project as much as I did making it. It was an absolute blast using magic cards as inspiration for this Marines paint scheme, and it's a scheme I would have never tried on my own without this challenge. Here's that batch painting Space Marine video I mentioned earlier if you want to learn how to use the colored pencils more, or a couple other pretty cool cheats like using oil washes and a fountain pen. It's pretty great, let me tell you. Alright, go check it out. I'll see you later. Peace.